that he will too.
He's also a fine neighbor. Okay, it is 6:32, and I don't see Mr. Paul yet, but hopefully he can join soon. So I will call this meeting of the Champaign County Environment Land Use Committee to order at 6:33 now. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Portato,
Here.
King,
Here.
Patterson,
Here.
Paul, Store,
Present, and I like Dr. Furtado's waterfall very much.
Esri,
Here.
Thorsland.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum with one member absent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda with addendums. And you don't have to raise your hand, you can just say it, but thank you, Mary, for the motion. And a second. We got a second from Stephanie, and it's by Zoom, so it is by roll call. If Mary could call the roll for approval of the agenda.
Portato,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Before us tonight, we have the minutes from December 9th, 2021's regular meeting. First, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those.
Move to approve Esri.
Thank you, Aaron. A second? Second from Dr. Store. Thank you, Chris. Are there any addendums, changes, corrections, omissions before we vote? Seeing none, Mary, if you would call the roll, please.
Portato,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're about to open up public participation. I have 4 people over attendees. This is a county board meeting, so there's a time limit of 5 minutes for each and an hour total. I don't think we'll have a problem with the hour, and I'll try to be generous with the 5 minutes. I'll remind you that if you're here to speak about the bees, that this subject will stay at this committee for 2 meetings. So we won't be voting on anything tonight. I'm sure the board members have read the extensive comments in the packet or took time to tune into the zoning board meetings. There was lots of discussion about this, and it's actually the second time it's been here, but we welcome your input. And let me see who I want to bring over first. I think I'll just go in order that they're here. The person labeled as a phone number 217-841, the first digits. I'm going to move you over. Can you hear me? And go ahead and unmute, and let's see if we can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And your name, please, for the record.
Okay, my name is Cindy Erkey, and I am calling from Ford County. I am a member of the county board here, and I would like to address the committee about your upcoming possible changes to your wind farm zoning ordinance. I just wanted to check in with everyone and kind of give them an update on what we recently went through here in Ford County. We finally passed an updated zoning ordinance. Took us 2 years. We got hit with COVID just as we were in the midst of things, so it extended everything out from our original ZBA hearing. But originally, we decided to open, our county decided to open up the zoning ordinance for changes because we had several complaints from a current wind farm here in Ford County. And through those complaints, the board learned that there were no real teeth in the ordinance for people that had problems. The problems that came forth were television reception problems and some noise complaints and things like that. And we learned that the original ordinance, which I think was adopted by most counties, just really didn't give the board any real function to address these problems and help people. So we opened the ordinance up, received testimony through our ZBA. Also, two of our board members live in another current project. So Ford County has 2 working projects and 1 project currently being built. So we've learned through experience kind of what changes needed to be made to our ordinance. So 2 of our other county board members lived in a functioning farm that went in 2008. They have personal experience with noise issues and shadow flicker issues. And so here in Ford County, we looked at our ordinance, thought very long and hard, and looked at all the testimony submitted, and decided to make our setbacks from a property line. We did that basically to encourage the wind farms in a project to reach out to all property owners to get waivers from everyone so that everyone in the project zone would then become a participating property and be aware that they're waiving their rights to shadow flicker, noise issues, any other problems that may come up in regards to a wind farm. We also wanted to make sure that someone who didn't want to participate had their property protected, because as you know, these machines, they're giant machines that produce electricity, and there are effects that are produced by them. So even though the machine is on someone's property, those effects, noise and shadow flicker, travel across property lines. So we wanted to make sure that non-participating properties were protected and had the choice of whether to participate or not. We did our setbacks at 2,250 feet. We had testimony from a gentleman, Ted Hartke, that his home had problems at 2,225 feet, I believe. So we figured, since we were doing the property line, the board member that we have that had problems with noise as well had a similar issue. He was experiencing sound problems at a little less. I can't remember the exact number, but since we were doing property lines, we went with just a little over the 2,025 to the 2,250 from a property line. We also looked at shadow flicker, found out that there is technology available to address shadow flicker. And there is also technology to address the lights that are put on the top of the turbines. It's radar based, and it will reduce nighttime lights with the flashing. I live 10 miles north of one of the projects, and even 10 miles north, I can see those lights flashing at night from my home. We're very flat here in Ford County, so we can see it from a distance. Basically, I just wanted to bring those things up, let you guys know if anyone has any questions or would like to see the Ford County ordinance. I would be happy to talk to you guys, or the ZBA members, whatever, give you guys information, and to encourage you to really look at setting your setbacks from a property line instead of a foundation of a home. Also consider that current turbines are 600 feet or taller. When you adopted your ordinance, just as we adopted our original ordinance, the tallest turbines were about 390 some feet tall. So their technology and size has increased, and it's great to be looking at your ordinance and updating to those new technologies. But I am available. Again, my name is Cindy Erke from Ford County. I have a county email address. It's on our Ford County website. I would be happy to give you guys more information or help out in any way I can. So that's all I have for you tonight.
All right. Thank you very much, Cindy. I appreciate that for a group that's gone through it.
Yep.
And
I appreciate the time.
if you don't mind staying around until we're out of public participation, if the board members have any questions, maybe they want to ask you then, but we don't ask questions during this period.
No problem. I'll be happy to stay on the line.
Okay, I'm going to try to stick with the wind farm participants first. I know that Mr. Hartke is probably here for that. So Mr. Hartke, I'm going to bring you over now. And Kathy, if you could mute, that would be great.
Okay, I would like to turn on my camera here, but better than that, I have a couple slides. Do you think that you can let me post a slide that you can see?
I'm not sure I have that, but maybe the county can do that. And if we can't do that, then you could turn on your camera.
Okay,
Let me see. It looks like I can let you share. Remember, we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to let you. Yeah, no, I can share myself. No, what happened? I think you are sharing now. Or are you seeing my screen?
I see a screen that's got Firefox privacy notice at the top.
That would be me. So,
Okay.
Mr. Hartke, I'm not sure I can let you share as co-host. And I apologize. If you want to go ahead and turn your camera on. And what we would also ask, of course, is if you could email your slides to John,
Okay.
then they can be included in the packet when it goes to ZBA.
Well, I thought my camera would automatically turn on here, but it's not. Give me a tip here.
Wiggle your mouse over all the tiles, and then start stop video should be in the lower left where the microphone was. Did it work?
Okay, I see a mute.
And then next to that, there's not a start
No,
stop
I
video.
just have a
No?
raise hand only.
Okay, well, you might not. Again, that might be the settings for attendees.
Okay, that's okay. I'm not that good looking of a person. Okay, I'm very concerned with our wind ordinance. There's a lot of stuff in here that I saw in the meeting minutes that shows that this group is addressing the strobe light, red flashing lights for aircraft detection. I wanted this group to feel very comfortable with that technology in Morgan County. Apex agreed to install ADLS lighting, which is the aircraft detection lighting system, which is radar activated. I think a lot of people that don't live in wind farms from the surrounding communities look over and they complain a lot that they hate the red flashing lights. So when people tell me that, I agree with them. I think it's bad, but it's nothing like living inside the wind farm. Invenergy built wind turbines in 2012 in Champaign and Vermilion County. And my house is in the middle of the wind farm. And at the time I worked for an engineering company in Champaign. It was Daly and Associates, which had just changed over ownership to a company called Foth in Van Dyke. And I was a surveyor there, and the wind farm came to my area, and I actually was one of the surveyors that did the surveying for the project. I was very much in favor of the project when it came. Before it was built, I quit my job and started my own company. Now I have my Hartke Engineering Company in Ogden. And, you know, as it was constructed, I didn't do any work on the job on that project, but I thought it was going to be good for my for my neighbors and for my school. And then the construction got over with, and I thought the worst part was over because of the dust and things. But then they turned on the turbines, and we had an immediate problem and a reaction where the turbine noise was even inside of our house. And at nighttime, it caused us to be awake a lot. And the wind company, Invenergy, after getting some complaints from us, they started shutting down turbines at night. So they shut down the wind farm turbines closest to us 51 nights between January and May. And they, looking back, I think they were just trying to keep us quiet. And we didn't complain to anyone besides Invenergy until about middle of April. And once we started complaining, then they quit cooperating with us, and then they refused to turn off the turbines. So we dealt with sleep deprivation for the next 6 or more months, and we left our house on Christmas weekend 2013. So I went within an 11-month period thinking this is really good and acceptable, all the way to I left my house because of it. I realized that it doesn't happen to everyone. There's a lot of people that disagree with me and they don't believe my story. I think that part hurts just about as much as losing the house, and then on top of that, getting some negativity and ridicule and things. That's been very tough. But I understand it doesn't affect everyone. It's kind of like peanut allergies. Even though I like peanut butter and eat peanuts, I don't think we should force feed peanut butter to all the kids at school. I think that's legitimate. I want you all to know that as your job as ELUC committee members, I think your job is to protect residents first with your zoning, and your second priority is to make wind companies profitable. So that's where we're at. We're either going to protect citizens or make wind companies allowable to come here, it seems like. But I think the key is to let every family decide for themselves how close they want to be next to a wind turbine. And after a noise study was done at our house, one of the acousticians named Dr. Paul Schomer testified that in Livingston County for a similar project, he said that at 3,250 feet, all but 2 of the homes would still be protected. I'm asking this board to change the setback to 3,250 feet to follow his recommendation, because he's one that did a 4-month noise study at my house. And with the current standard, it's the IPCB standard noise levels. With your current standard, when the turbines were 2,225 feet and 1,650 feet from my house, the noise level was 0.1 decibels below the maximum allowable noise limit in Illinois. And I think it's terribly shameful to have a family stuck with 5 nights or 6 nights a week where the maximum allowable noise level is allowed to happen outside the walls of your house. And I think that's a major problem with our ordinance, that I think it leaves our citizens very vulnerable, like I was. And if you put in that big safe setback, it lets the wind company come to every individual family to negotiate with them and give waivers or
Mr. Hartke?
Yes.
Yeah, you've gone about 6 or 7 minutes, so if
Okay,
you could wrap up.
I can wrap up. I just don't
Very
want
good.
I don't want the county board as a middleman to give away someone's use of their bedroom instead of letting people choose for themselves. And you guys need a much bigger setback. Thank you for giving me the extra couple minutes. I appreciate that.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hartke. Is there anyone else? If you could mute Mr. Hartke, or I'll move you back.
Eric, I was just going to say Jen Straub could be moved over if she would so desire to participate on the panelist side.
Yeah, well, I know when I was on ZBA, we didn't let county board members testify, but I'm not sure actually of the rules on ELOC. So, but I moved Jen over.
Well, she can participate, just can't vote on
Right.
anything at ELOC.
Going to be a looky Lou, but thank you very much for recognizing me.
And I also want to point out that at 6:37, Mr. Pohl joined the committee, Mary. So we have a full board. If someone else is here to talk about the wind ordinance, if you could raise your hand, Lori Cooper, if you're here for that. If you're here for the bees, then we'll get to that. If Mr. Hartke was the last one for wind. Okay, Lori raised her hand for that, so I'm going to let you talk. Hi, Lori.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to echo some of Ted's comments. I've talked to Ted and had occasion to be in his backyard as well as around some of the windmills in Vermilion County. And the things that Ted said, the light technology that makes them only come on when approached, as well as maintaining the larger setbacks is really important to me. That's it.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your brevity and your points. All right, I'm going to move you back over, Lori. I don't think anybody else is here for that. I see Mr. Bryson is here, and I anticipate what he's for, and I see Mr. Ingram. So let's move over to the B subject, I believe, and then we'll let Mr. Ingram speak when we get to him, and he can pick either or both. Mr. Bryson, you should be able to talk now.
Okay, you got me?
I do.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your time. And I'll be as brief as possible because we've about kicked this dead horse into glue already. But I would like to say that I can relate to Mr. Hartke's comments about retaliation and being just the most horrible person in the world, as well as having to move away from your home. I added some material today, or sent that in to be added to your packet, and I would kindly ask that you guys do take a little time and go over that. Some of the folks in the neighborhood, they don't have a computer, and we're taking a heck of a beat. One guy's getting a knee worked on and stuff like that, so they're not going to be around. But please consider that. And unfortunately, we can't have you over in the summertime to experience what we get to experience every summer. But please take it under consideration and send it forward to the county board if you would. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bryson, also for your brevity. And yes, we got the material sent to us today, and I'm sure the board members will read it. All right. It looks like I've lost Mr. Ingram, and that has finished up my attendees list. So once, twice, three times, I'm going to close public participation now for the rest of the evening. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time out tonight. And again, if Cindy can hang on in case the board has questions for you, that would be great. All right, moving on to communications. Do any of the board members have communications for the board tonight? Just go ahead and speak up or wave your hand. Stephanie?
I just wanted to say for the record that the waterfall is Brandywine Falls, part of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park Complex, and it's about a mile, maybe a little bit more from where I grew up, from the house I grew up in.
Very nice. Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else? All right. Very good. Thank you, folks. Okay. We're moving on to item 7. This is new business. The direction regarding proposed zoning ordinance text amendments to revise certain zoning ordinance requirements for wind farms. This would be approved by us if we decide to, and move it to ZBA, where they will hold public hearings. So let's open up the floor to the board members first for discussion. I'm sure people have read what we're talking about. We heard some favorable comments tonight for the ADLS, which is FAA speak for these automatic lights that come on when the plane basically gets close enough to set them on. It means that the lights aren't on all the time. Our old ordinance talked a lot about lights before this system was developed. The ordinance is actually quite old now. It's more than a decade old. And we addressed some of the lighting issues by talking about perimeter lighting, where only the ones on the outside edges and not the entire farm was lit, and they had to be synchronized so that it wasn't like a crazy Christmas tree up in the sky. So I think I appreciate that as a positive step going forward using new technology. Another reason this came up is, as we heard from Cindy, the units themselves have gotten bigger. There's pros and cons to that. They generate more power, which is a pro, but they can potentially generate more problems for adjacent landowners. There's some argument that the bigger, taller ones produce less noise because they're bigger and taller, and by default then the source of noise is further away from both the ground and people near it. The ordinance revisions that Mr. Hall brought up changed setbacks. We had some what I thought were fairly reasonable setbacks in the old ordinance for the height of the towers. And we defined the difference between participants and non-participants. There's some other language in there. John, if you want to just briefly summarize for the board, maybe what's different from this and from the original.
Okay, the separations to dwellings, and these are to dwellings, not to property lines. We just simply are basing those on the same proportions as the current ordinance. Current ordinance has a 500-foot maximum height, and for a non-participating dwelling, we require a minimum 1,200-foot separation. We've never seen that 1,200 feet separation. It's always been greater, but that's the minimum. So the proposal is to change the minimum separation to no less than 2.4 times the maximum allowed wind farm tower height. And again, that's only provided that the noise level caused by the wind farm complies with the Pollution Control Board regulations. To a participating dwelling, which is to say a dwelling of someone who's participating, the separation is no less than 2 times the maximum allowed height. And again, provided that the noise level complies with the Pollution Control Board. Several changes are recommended to incorporate the now state required agricultural impact mitigation agreement. Those really are just formalities, but it brings our ordinance into line with state law. And we've recommended increasing fees for a single wind farm tower. Well, the special use permit for a wind farm is a minimum proposed to be $34,000 or $760 per tower. And when it comes time to build, the tower price for a permit is proposed to be $10,000. Those are substantial increases over our current fees. But as the chair said, these fees are over 10 years old. And with these changes, we'll still only be in the mid-range of what Illinois counties charge for fees. Those are the only changes. Regarding the separations, I mean, you've heard some comments tonight. One person recommending 3,250, Ford County, 2,250, right? That's in the table that we have. Since this went out, we did check Vermilion County. We did not include Vermilion County originally because they don't have zoning. But when I was doing some checking, I found that Vermilion County increased their minimum separation to 3 times the height of the towers. That's in line with McLean County. I don't know where 3 comes from. The history in Champaign County has been we've only had 1 wind farm built under our current ordinance. That was a small wind farm with only 30 towers. The only complaints we've ever received were complaints about drainage. And as far as I know, drainage concerns have all been dealt with. So I can't say why we haven't received complaints, but we've never received complaints about noise or flicker. I hear people complain about the red lights. So I know that as far as that goes, then adding aircraft detection lighting systems for any future wind farm will be seen as a big plus. Obviously, these changes won't affect our current wind farm. It would become non-conforming. Any any replacement that would need a new special use permit for that wind farm would require upgrading or a waiver of these requirements. I have heard talk that they're hoping to come in for an update sometime soon, but no specific date. And I have not heard that from the wind farm. I've heard that from a highway commissioner in the area. And I don't know if members of, I think we talked about last month, there is rumor of another wind farm in the northeastern part of our county, possibly be an expansion of California Farm, California Ridge, or a separate one, but it's the same developer, Invenergy. But again, I haven't had any communication from Invenergy. I've only had heard rumors. So that's all I have.
Okay, comments or questions from the board for John or just in general? Chris?
Hey, thank you. Mr. Hall, you referenced, you said Illinois, that these have to comply with Illinois Pollution Control Board noise levels. Is that something that is routinely measured or only measured if there's a request? And who does that?
All right. Well, when the wind farm is proposed, of course, there's a noise study with computer generated noise results. And then later, your ordinance specifies that if there is a valid complaint, it doesn't define a valid complaint, but if there is a valid complaint, ELOC can authorize a noise study. And if a violation is found, then the cost of the noise study has to be reimbursed by the wind farm owner. And of course, the problem has to somehow be corrected. But there's no, I mean, I think it would be difficult to do a validation noise study after it's built. But that is not a requirement unless there is a valid complaint, which is left up to the committee to decide when that is a valid complaint, strong enough complaint to require the county to hire an acoustician to do a noise study of the built wind farm.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Thank you. It's kind of been my experience, kind of an unfortunate one, of kind of going on a camping trip down on the in southern Illinois and being awakened by a pulley that obviously had a bearing that was completely gone out. And it just kind of ruined the outdoor experience, let's just say. And my concern is that these turbines may develop problems over time. And these are kind of gradual sorts of things that develop through the normal process of wear. And a wind tower that may be functioning very well upon construction can over time become a nuisance and quite a disturbance to neighbors. Is it possible that we could is it within our within what we can require that the wind farm owners do periodic studies of or measurements of noise and that sort of thing that might develop over time by, of course, these should be done by an independent company. Back to you, John, or whoever.
Well, in the case of a defective turbine that's making noise, we could, I mean, my presumption is that they will fix that. They do have to submit annual maintenance records to the county. If someone would complain about something like that, the county could ask for a repair. Now, one thing about turbines, sometimes the repairs take a lot of planning to get the right equipment there. So they don't generally happen overnight. But I would think that a defective turbine could also be subject to an enforcement action under our nuisance ordinance. I don't think something like that would require a noise study, but that could be up to, I guess, the committee's discretion if we got a complaint. My genuine hope and expectation is that something like that would just be fixed as a matter of course. The current wind farm, I've never received a complaint like that. And of course, one thing about these turbines, every time they change direction, you can hear the linkage adjusting. They do make noise when they change direction, when they have to change for the wind. I wouldn't think something like that would have ruined your camping experience. It's more of a momentary thing just when they're adjusting. So there is some sound that you will hear, but that's supposed to be momentary. So again, my view is that we have some authority to require repairs when repairs are necessary.
I mean, I may have been a little misleading. I was referring to another type. We were near another industrial type of facility, not a wind turbine.
Okay.
But I know that sometimes when facilities get a little bit old and maintenance costs rise, unfortunately, sometimes owners will neglect or defer maintenance, and leading to the sorts of problems I described, which we can't really easily foresee at the beginning of a project, but develop much later. I have no further comments at this time.
All right, thank you, Chris. I will say historically, I became the inadvertent chair of ZBA during all of the discussion, first on the ordinance, and then was the chair officially when this Invenergy project came in, if I have my timeline right. And there was a lot of discussion about noise. There was, we require a hotline number to be displayed. As far as John knows, no one has called that number. It's supposed to be relayed to the county. These are substantial investments, so I'm saddened that your camping trip was disturbed by an industrial complex and their poor maintenance record. But I think that because these make money, the better they turn. I think that maybe they keep up with these things. These are huge investments and complicated machines that really enjoy a proper maintenance schedule. And as John said, we get the maintenance schedule here at the county. So I'm going to let Stephanie go, and then I'm going to see Mr. Hartke has raised his hand, and maybe he's got something, but public participation is over, but we'll see if it's relevant. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the four thing, I guess there's like four things we're considering. I think it makes a ton of sense to change your zoning to the increased height if that's the way that that's the way they're going. I think that these newfangled FAA approved lighting system makes a ton of sense. Looking at the fee schedule, some of the fees seem a little bonkers in some of the other county, but I think we have to be careful not to disincentivize this kind of green energy. But I think that I guess my one question is 34,000 seems really specific. So I just was curious as to how that was arranged in. And I think adding in the AIMAs make a ton of sense. So I guess with that said, I'd be fine with this being like the first, like, because this has to go to ZBA, right? So I'd be fine with this draft going to ZBA. I guess my one question was the fee schedule. Where did the 34,000 comes from? Because that seemed kind of very specific.
Yeah, I'm doing some math here. 440. The 34,000 is based on the same reasoning of the current 20,000. 20,000 is a minimum, or 440 per tower, and it takes 44 towers to result in a fee greater than 20,000. Again, even a small wind farm, there's a huge amount of work, and the added cost per turbine, you know, doesn't matter a whole lot until you get up into a large number of turbines. So that 34,000 is based on 760 per 44 turbines. And then once you have more than 44 turbines, then we start increasing at 760 per each additional turbine. Again, our current wind farm was only 30 wind farm towers, and it really occupied everyone in our office for the couple of months that we went through the public hearing and the county board process. Frankly, I am not eager to take on a wind farm of like 100 wind farm towers, simply because there's so many more people you have to deal with. But anyhow, that's the basis.
Okay, so then maybe let me back it. So 760 seems like a very oddly specific number. Is there a reason it's not like 750 or 8?
It is some increase over the current fee of 440.
Okay.
And again, these were, the time these were established, we did a search of other fees, and we settled on a fee that was not the most, but not the least. We always try to be sort of mid-range. I don't think we capture, well, I'm very comfortable in saying we do not capture all of our fees, that we do not recapture all the costs for the special use permit hearing in the special use permit fee. We actually don't capture all our costs until the wind farm actually builds, and then they pay the wind farm tower fee per tower. And then at that point, we may be getting a little more, I'm sure we're getting more fees than what the costs have been put in at that point. But I have learned since the California Ridge wind farm was constructed, our ordinance requires a lot of ongoing work with the wind farms. Long-term ELUC members know that every few years we update the financial assurance. And that occupies a lot of my time. I keep on track of the escrow account. Every month we get an escrow account report. We make sure things work out well. And just the coordination, you know, once the county board approves the adjustment to the financial assurance, this financial assurance is almost an every month thing, making sure we get the check finally, making sure everything is correct, dealing with the annual reports. So the best way to look at this wind farm fee is to make sure we're recapturing our costs over the lifetime of the wind farm. And those costs just continue to mount.
Sure. No, I wasn't against raising it. I just thought it seemed like an odd set of numbers, like why it was around.
Yeah.
But that was all.
Would you like something like 749.99? Would that
No.
sound okay?
No, I'm fine with it.
Very good. Those are good questions, though. Yeah, and as John said, having sat through things like the financial insurance assurance discussions way back then, this was a huge topic, and it was known then that it would be a lot of work even before it happened. And so it's not surprising to hear from John that it continues to be exactly what John predicted it would be 10 some plus years ago. Does anyone else on the board have any comments or suggestions? And Aaron?
Unmute myself there. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, the 4 items that have been proposed by planning and zoning that we update, they make sense to me to do, because that basically has been alluded to. Yeah, our existing ordinance is 10 plus years old and times change. So ordinances need to be looked at and updated. So I'm fine with what I see, in large part too, because we haven't had any complaints on setbacks and so on and so forth. So that, as of now, is telling me that I guess ours ordinance is doing what it should. So I'm not going to say that if someone had, if someone had something else, you know, if we're going to update this ordinance, we might as well update it now. If someone else had something, some other part of it that needed to be updated, but these here, I assume, are the ones that planning and zoning, John and his staff came up with, that are the big ones that need to be updated. So it looks good to me and makes sense to do these.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I would agree. I think that, you know, that we're going to send this off to ZBA, and where they have the opportunity to really hear a lot of input and to really get into the nuts and bolts and things. We're giving them these parameters, and we shouldn't always look at them as the final parameters, but as the starting parameters for the discussion. It has been a while, and it has been necessary to change this. I think that we saw the one farm come in. I think there's a couple of factors, and not just, you know, that our ordinance maybe is a little old, that has been the reason we haven't seen another project come in yet. Was a lot of defocusing from renewables in the past 4 or 5 years, and they're just now starting to come back to the front again. So I think we might see an uptick, and this was sort of the inspiration or the driver to get after our now older ordinance and kind of modernize it to fit sort of the modern equipment. So I too would be happy to send this in its current form to ZBA to let the process begin. And Mr. Harkey, I think that's a really good place for you to continue to express your story at ZBA. That's really the public hearings for these things. And it's not usual that after public participation is over that we would let you speak again now. I don't know, unless any of the board members have a question for you. I think we're going to let you save your comments for the ZBA meetings when this comes up. And with that, John, if we were to send this forward, when would that potential first meeting be on this for the people that are here listening?
The earliest, I forgot to check the docket today, but as of last Friday, the earliest date for a new public hearing to open would be March 31st, 2022. This would obviously be more than a one meeting public hearing. But just to remind the process, once the ZBA makes a recommendation, this would come back to ELUC, and being a text amendment, it stays at ELUC for 2 meetings before it gets referred to the county board. And again, the first ELUC meeting for a ZBA recommendation is where the ELUC either supports the recommendation or decides they want to remand it back to the ZBA. And again, it could be remanded even after it goes to the county board, but the municipalities need to know what whether ELUC supports the ZBA recommendation or not. So that's why we stay at ELUC for 2 months so that municipalities can weigh in on it. Since we're not allowed to do wind farm towers within 1.5 miles of any municipality, I would hope we wouldn't get any comments, but municipalities being what they are, you never know.
That didn't stop them the last time. Yeah, Aaron's smiling. I think maybe he listened to some of that too. They definitely had some ideas. And then it was interesting that after it was passed, they sort of adopted most of what John and the staff put together and what the ZBA and the board came up with, and used it, especially for the private. So it shows that in its time, it was actually a very good ordinance. So, and clearly workable. Any other comments from the board members on this item before we take a vote on recommending it to ZBA or not?
Eric, could I just point out one thing that I think I
Yep.
forgot to mention originally? The proposed amendment does away with any height limit. It leaves the height up to whatever the wind farm developer wants to propose, provided that it has to conform with any FAA requirements. So we're going from a height limit of 500 feet to no height limit. I know in McLean County right now, Invenergy has proposed a new wind farm with a height of 591 feet. And that's what I would expect any, if the wind farm that we've heard rumored would happen, I would expect it would have a height of about 591 feet. But 10 years from now, when some far off wind farm is proposed, we have no idea what the heights are going to be at that point. And again, as long as it meets all FAA requirements and has the ADLS lighting, and who knows what else might come up by that time, the height might be something much greater. But we're proposing to do away with the maximum height and just let that be worked out between the developer and the FAA.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that for a couple of reasons. I think technology-wise, there's nobody striving to make these incredibly high. There's construction costs, sort of the technology's there. And one of the things that the ordinance does well is it's not a fixed setback, it is a ratio. And so if they want to make it taller, they're going to have to move it further away. And so there's some mechanism that allows this to, pardon the expression, allows the ordinance to grow with any potential change in it. I agree with you. If, what we think is coming down is from the same company that they're talking about in the other county, that we're probably looking at the same kind of units, just for matters of standardization and economy and all the other reasons Chris talks about with maintenance and things. It's much easier if they're all the same, right? It's the Southwest airline model. So I don't have an issue with that. Does any of the other board members have any concern that we don't have a maximum in it? I see Aaron shaking a no. And I see what I think is a no from Mary King, and not much else. So I think, thank you for that comment though, John, but I think that the board seems to be comfortable with where it's at. Okay, with that, unless there is anything further, I'd entertain a motion to propose we send this to ZBA for public hearings as it is.
So moved.
Moved by Stephanie, and Aaron, was that a second? It looks
Sure,
like
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Mary, Ward, would you please call the roll?
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Paul,
No.
Store,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That moves on then to the ZBA. May the wind be at your back, John and staff. And I think I'll tune in or maybe come via the Zoom and attend these because it'll bring back either very good memories or some PTSD. So, and I thank everyone who came to comment on that tonight. And I thank Cindy for coming in from another county with the information that they had. It's all appreciated. We're going to move on now to item 8. This is an item to receive and place on file by ELOC, as John said, for the 30-day review period. This is zoning case 014-AT21 to amend the Champaign County zoning ordinance to establish beekeeping requirements as summarized in the full legal advertisement and summarized as follows. 1, amend section 3.0 definitions by adding a definition for apiary, beekeeping, honeybee, nucleus colony, and other related terms. 2, add footnote 29 to section 5.2, table of authorized principal uses. 3, add footnote 330 to section 5.2, table of authorized principal uses. And 4, add new section 7.8, beekeeping in the R1, R2, R3 districts with new requirements for beekeeping. So before I don't even know if we need to take a vote to keep it on file, but it will be here for a month to allow more comment. And does the board have any input to what has been presented to us? And I think we all got either a copy to the link or an actual copy of what's proposed. And again, the ZBA was 6-0 with a recommended denial on this. And if you read the comments from all of the public and in particular from 2 of the board members who had very specific reasons for it, I think that you'll find them informative. And I remind you that this has been before us before, not in this particular formulation of ELOC, but in the last round. This was at ELOC before and did not move forward. So any input or comments from anyone while we let this sit for the next meeting? Seeing none, do we need a vote to have it sit? I don't believe so.
Well, I need to let municipalities know if ELOC is
Yes.
expecting to recommend the denial or just what ELOC wants to go with on a prospective basis.
Okay, well then I would, at this point, enjoy some comments from the board. We did have a flat denial from ZBA across the board, so to speak. I am in agreement with them. I think we've worked very hard to try to do this twice now. I think that it is, I really appreciate all the work and the work again by staff, and I appreciate all the input from many, many concerned beekeepers in the county. And I also appreciate Mr. Bryson and his input and all of the information from what can only be said as a particularly difficult situation with really one specific person. And that was addressed in part by some intervention from the state. I don't know that it's fully resolved. I don't know that this ordinance would change much of it if I understand the details right now. So I would not be uncomfortable if the board decided to follow the recommendations of ZBA and let this sit for a month with a recommendation for us for the same denial. Aaron?
This issue is kind of, well, I guess first off to start, John, do you recall any time when the ZBA sent forth a recommendation for denial, that the county board went against that. And in general, basically, I know that at least the vast majority of the time, the board votes with the ZBA, but do you specifically remember any when it was the ZBA recommended denial and the board said, okay, but we're going to approve it, I guess you'd say?
I don't recall any ZBA recommendation of denial for any proposed text amendment.
Okay. So this is a kind of a first that you remember to begin with in that respect.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. And I did check with the state's attorney regarding the standard practice of county board either going with the ZBA recommendation or remanding. And the state's attorney confirmed that that is what they recommend, but it's also not a absolutely necessary approach. But they do recommend that if you're not going to follow the ZBA recommendation, it would be best to document why you think that might not be.
Okay. Thanks. I understand the reasoning why, at least I feel like I do, why ZBA came back with what they did. I think we all know that this, especially if we do nothing, it's not going to solve the issue. That's for sure. But I think it's also largely understood that what was proposed as an ordinance wouldn't necessarily truly solve the issue either, because there's things such as, now what the final that came back to us didn't even have I believe did not have a maximum number of hives that any one person could have in a certain size lot. But there are ways you kind of say of getting around that in our ordinance. If you had, if there was a maximum of 4 for your lot, well, maybe your neighbor next door, they would accept 4. You were the one that were taking care of them, but they were technically on your neighbor's lot, and then you could have 4 more on the next lot and on down the line. So to a large degree, it didn't solve the issue. I don't like, necessarily passing ordinances that don't need to be passed. Bigger government, just for the sake of bigger government, isn't good government. But yet, I do kind of like the idea that we were trying to at least set some guidelines to maybe help this issue a little bit. I like that idea. Maybe the way we were going about it wasn't the best. But I do like that we at least spent some time on it to try and address the issue. It's I talked with Brad Euchen at Farm Bureau this last week, and they of course, their big thing is they come across and think that bees are agriculture, which I think they are, but I believe Mr. Hall's looked into it, and it's his belief that bees, while agriculture, are somewhat different than other production agriculture, and that they can be regulated. So I don't know that whole you can't regulate agriculture is truly pertinent in this issue, since they are bees. And it sounds to me like, from what I've understood, that, well, bees are a little bit different. They've just been kind of set aside, I guess you could say, in their own special little category that, yes, they can be regulated. I guess right now I would probably be in favor of going along with ZBA, but it's just one of those we haven't solved the issue. I don't know if we can solve the issue to a larger degree, unless you truly clamp down on beekeeping, just so tight that it does make it almost impossible, if not impossible, to do within a residential area. And I don't believe that's right. So yeah, at this point in time, I guess I would kind of tend to lean towards, I would tend to lean towards denying it, but it's still, it's kind of frustrating, I guess, that we haven't come up with something that would be acceptable to the majority of the people. But if that's the case, that's the case. And maybe maybe that's just a signal that we shouldn't do it. So that's my input. Take it for what it's worth, I guess. Maybe I just said a lot of nothing with a bunch of words.
Thank you, Aaron. Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo Aaron. I think I also had the opportunity to talk to the Farm Bureau, and they expressed their concern about this ordinance. I mean, I'm not going to fly against the ZBA, being unanimous, but I will say I didn't find there are reasoning for the things that they articulated particularly persuasive. And I also found a lot of the public comment to maybe be maybe understandably misinformed. A lot of the public comment acted as if like we were making it illegal to have bees and like you'd have to step on bees. Like it was like kind of absurd, to be frank. I think that this is a pretty reasonable ordinance that would allow for just more healthy keeping of bees, both for the humans and for the bees themselves. But I do think like, it just seems to me like this issue has sort of gone beyond a reasonable conversation in a lot of ways. And just a lot of the stuff that was said about the ordinance is just not represented in the ordinance. I mean, there were some good critiques, but by and large, I was like, even people who emailed me, I'm like, well, those 7 things you said aren't true, but thanks. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I guess I think that it's reasonable to try to maintain a standard that's not just, I mean, it's not just good for people, but also for the bees themselves. Like, it's not good to have too many swarms in a small area. Like, it just isn't. So, and I mean, that's again, somebody I really like bee. I know I've talked about this a lot, but I'm sitting here drinking from a bee cup, sitting next to a bee pillow. Like, I like bees. You can regulate something and still like it, right? I also like wind farms, but I think there should be regulation for wind farms because to keep everybody safe. But that said, I mean, I'm not going to be the only like person to vote against the ZBA, but I don't find their opinion to be particularly reasonable. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Mr. Paul?
I just wanted to say that, I agree with the ZBA and that, I'm not big on telling anybody that they can do on their own property. And then I think we should support the ZBA's ruling.
All right, thank you, Jacob.
Eric, could I add some info?
Sure.
Listening to the comments of the board members, I wanted to point out that in Mr. Bryson's package today, he included the best management practices for beekeeping in Illinois from the Illinois State Beekeepers Association. And that best management practices recommends providing water for bees. It recommends using a solid, not putting the beehives against the property line and unless there's a fence or a dense plant barrier to sort of provide some protection for neighbors. Keep hives as far as possible from roads, sidewalks, and rights of way. It encourages posting signs to alert neighbors to the presence of bees. Signs is one thing I did not include in the ordinance because in my view, you're pointing out that here are those bees that you'd like to do something to if you want to. But my point is, it's the point that Mr. Bryson made. the ordinance as it was modified is completely in keeping with the best management practices, except that it does in fact limit the number of hives. It had a limit of 4 on lots 10,000 square feet or less in area. And as Mr. Storr pointed out, the provision for managing swarms really ended up allowing 5 hives permanently on the lot, in addition to the nucleus hives that are allowed over the winter. And time again, I found examples of best management practices. We included them to the ZBA, and they were entirely consistent with the ordinance, but yet the ordinance was still too restrictive for anybody to support. And that's all I wanted to point out.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I don't recall, I think anytime when I was on ZBA, that we had a unanimous denial that went to the board. I just don't recall that. I know that we had some that were close, and I think maybe were either remanded back or were changed once they got to ELOC, but it was, it was the difference between one vote or something. It wasn't like this. I agree with you that what you have in this, it really, you as usual did a lot of homework on this. Mr. Bryson provided a lot of information, and it really matches what most people say is standard. When I had multiple dozen, I think 24 hives on the farm, the state bee inspector came from the ag department to see what we were doing there, and didn't say that we had to make any changes because what we were doing was, I guess, considered best practice. But it seems like there is some regulation if they're willing to come out and send someone. But yeah, this was a strong denial, and I'm not one to disagree with a unanimous decision like this. It means maybe we need to do something else to it in the future if this problem comes up again that can get better support. And hopefully the community, the beekeeping community, does some self-policing if a particular beekeeper becomes a particular problem and inspires this kind of effort in the future. Did you have more to add, John?
Well, this was a very difficult decision for the ZBA. There were some members, one member a couple of times made a motion to limit just the number of hives. We had provided specific instructions on how to reduce the amendment to just a limit on the number of hives. But, once you vote on something at the ZBA, if you vote on a recommendation to approve and it fails, that's the same thing as a denial. And so I don't know if that member just sensed there wasn't enough support for that approach, but I don't want this committee to think that there were 6 ZBA members who all thought this should have been denied. There were 6 who voted that way in the end, but that was not the thinking. And Eric, I think you understand that many times the ZBA does vote en masse rather than if the ZBA votes differently, the split vote at the ZBA, that is rare. And we did not get that. It was unanimous no, even though there had been some proposals for a lesser ordinance, but there just clearly was not that support. I just wanted you to know that.
Mr. Esri.
Yes, thanks again. So John, what you're saying is if we would, this is your opinion, obviously, if we would remand it back to ZBA with just limiting the number of hives only, do you think that would have just your gut feeling, do you think that would have a chance of passing? I mean, that make it just a basic, because it largely does sound to me, now granted, I think that, a beekeeper should have a source of water and so on, and for their bees and these other best practices. But from what you just said, it kind of sounds like if it was almost as simple as you can only have so many bee colonies per your lot, up to a certain size, and then maybe another one up to another, every so many much more square foot. Do you think that would have a chance of passing?
My gut feeling is, okay, right now we're supposed to have a 7-member ZBA. Right now it's 6. It's been 6 for a long time. We have great difficulty finding enough ZBA members. My gut feeling is there are 3 ZBA members who will never support any kind of regulation for bees. And that's just the way that is. And it's 3 different reasons. They all have different reasons. My honest belief is if this committee wants any kind of regulation of bees, they should document why they want that and just override the ZBA and see if the county board goes with it. Again, I've checked with the state's attorney, and that's within your authority to do, but you really do need to establish why. I actually agree with many of the comments made here tonight about the ZBA's determination in this case. So, that's a possibility. Again, it's never been done, but this might be the day for tackling new things. Who knows?
I'm not seeing a lot of enthusiasm for the board for that. That's a thought I too had, Aaron, that maybe we could send it back with some direction. But I think it's pretty clear. I think that if we send it back with a remand to say, could you just focus on the number of hives, that might develop even more pushback. I think the other things you mentioned, like water and fencing and distance from the board, were probably the more agreeable things in this. I think maybe I got the impression the crux of the problem was we were going to tell people how many they could have, and they were flat out against that. Sir, again, Aaron?
Okay. Yeah, I just don't want to step on anybody's toes by raising my hand. And then I guess I just got to kind of think ahead. So let's say Mr. Hall suggested maybe if we just documented the reasons why and then just went ahead and sent it to the full board. So let's just say we do that. If this committee could agree on something and send it to the board, I don't know what the board's going to do with it, especially and maybe I guess I'm probably kind of an outlier. I think on the Republican side, they tend to be more along with the idea of the ZBA that don't regulate it. I mean, that's speaking from what I see. And I could be totally wrong with that. And I definitely don't want to speak for Mr. Paul, who's on this committee, but just from what I hear from my other Republican board members on the full board, that's kind of where I'm coming, what I see. So I don't know that even if we were to take that step, which is kind of the more drastic step to just kind of, say ZBA, well, okay, that was your recommendation, but we're going to document, well, and like I say, that's just me saying, if that's the step we were to take, if we're going to document why we think we need this and send it, I don't know, at least like I say, on the Republican side, that we would get approval anyway at the full board meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that regardless of what we did, I thought it was always going to be an uphill vote at the full board for this. We've all gotten a lot of email about it. Mr. Paul, your hand's back up, so have the floor.
Yeah, Aaron's right. I'm pretty sure the rest of the Republicans are not against you know, expanding any sort of rules for what people can do on their own property, especially when it comes to agriculture. And because, you know, it's a benefit. I know people personally who have hives that it's an asset to the community where, you know, they can remove bees from people's homes. So, I mean, there's a lot of different facets to beekeeping that are a benefit, that are just outside of me as a Republican saying that, you know, we shouldn't make more rules. I think we should just follow the ZBA.
All right, unless there's any other comment, I think, Aaron, go ahead. Kyle, Bill, you'll be next. Well, actually, let's let Kyle go and then we'll get back to you, Aaron. 'Cause
Thanks.
Kyle hasn't spoken yet.
To me, I think what really stands out, I think John said earlier that he's never seen the ZBA not recommend something. And the ZBA really does a deep dive. And I think that in the past, I've sort of respected the conclusions they've come to. And, you know, this is definitely a very controversial issue. And I think another aspect for me is just, there is kind of a scarcity of these types of policies. I mean, Illinois has a lot of counties and a lot of municipalities, and it doesn't seem like there's many that have enacted this. And you know, I wish we could do something to address that situation going on in the subdivision, but I don't know if we should pass something that affects everybody because of, you know, one sort of isolated incident. So, I mean, I'd be fine with going along with the ZBA's recommendation for denial.
All right, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks. I guess just one kind of a final statement thought for myself. From what I've seen, as of right now, it appears that the local beekeeping community is going to try and do, and you know, I say try because that's all they can, but hopefully they do a better job of self-policing. And if anything, I hope out of all of this, because I don't believe, especially after hearing tonight, and I'm in general agreement that I don't know that we should pass this ordinance. But hopefully a better job of self-policing within the beekeeping community is done that will somewhat, I mean, not entirely, because I don't think we can entirely cut down the bees going from one pet neighbor to another. You aren't going to be able to do that entirely, but that this hopefully does resolve a good portion of the problem, and that it stays that way, that they stay on top of it and don't get lax after, you know, so many years, you know, 15 years. And then next thing you know, we're getting big complaints again because somebody again has moved in 30, 40 beehives onto a residential lot out in the county. So I guess hopefully with all this kind of publicity, I guess you could say, because of us bringing this forward now for a second time and going through the ZBA, that hopefully that gets done.
All right, well, let me formulate the motion this way then. We'll take a vote on whether the ZBA will receive and place on file the recommended denial of the beekeeping ordinance. I think that'll be sufficient to let it sit for 30 days, don't you, John?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay, so unless there's any more comment on this, I would entertain that motion to receive this, place it on file as a recommended denial. I need a motion from somebody. Mr. Storr, a second from someone else. Second from Mr. Patterson, thank you. The clerk, please call the roll.
Furtado,
No.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, that motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody who commented on that. And again, the difficult issue, we will also be with this again next month. So, but this will give people time to get with the office. So with that, moving on to number 9, other business. We do have a monthly report for November. And again, I congratulate John and the staff for keeping remarkably up to date on these things. I think that's great. Unless there's anything to add, we'll move on to the chair's report. And there is no chair's report for this evening. And there are no items to be placed on the consent agenda. So with that, I would call this meeting adjourned right at 7:58. Thank you very much, everybody, and stay safe.